Hello everyone. Tonight we are stepping quietly into the tatami-lined corridors of a Kyoto castle. The air smells faintly of cedar wood and warm rice. Lantern light flickers just enough to show your bare feet as they press softly into straw. Mats. You stir, still wrapped in layers of woven silk, your katana leaning near the doorway. The sounds of the outside world, vendors, crows, maybe a distant koto being plucked, are all muffled now. You blink once, twice, and realize you're a samurai, a real 17th century too busy to blink, probably hasn't smiled in 5 years kind of samurai. Except you don't have a meeting with your lord this morning. You have a more pressing task, making sure your kimono sleeves and robe pockets are packed just right before stepping into the day. Because here's the kicker. Samurai didn't just walk around carrying swords and deep personal trauma. They had stuff. Pocket stuff. Everyday carry. You might call it EDC. They called it necessary. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the hall, your robe rustling like a soft whisper. With each step, something shifts slightly in your sleeves. Unlike today's shallow jean pockets, looking at you, women's fashion, your kimono sleeves are practically cargo pants. They've got room for tools, charms, letters, snacks, and maybe some emotions you're not quite ready to process. The first thing you check is the small wooden box tucked neatly into the inner fold of your robe. It's your kogatana, a slim utility knife with a carved hilt and a slightly dulled blade. You've used it to whittle wood, cut loose threads, and once to open a letter from a very dramatic poet friend who signed it Thunderwolf, and then added 5 haikus about bamboo. This little blade fits into the kazuka, the outer fitting, of your wakizashi's scabbard. While it's not made for combat, don't underestimate it. It's been used to open envelopes, peel fruit, and in some very uncomfortable cases, commit seppuku. But let's not go there tonight. As you adjust the blade's place in your pocket, you hear footsteps approaching. Your fellow samurai, Ito, gives you a lazy nod. You ready? He asks, glancing at your waist where your katana and wakizashi are carefully tied. You nod, and your hand reflexively checks for your inro, a tiered case made of lacquered wood, tied with silk cord, and balanced by a small bead called a netsuke. Inside the inro, that's where the magic starts. You've packed a little bit of everything. A vial of tooth-blackening dye. Because you're a man of fashion, even if modern people might say you look like you bit into a tire. A pinch of finely ground incense. Yes, for spiritual reasons, but also because your armor smells like regret. And a dried plum. Because samurai get hungry too, and nobody wants to duel on low blood sugar. You step out into the courtyard, the sunlight bouncing off polished armor and finely combed hair. It's a formal day, a procession maybe, or a minor ceremony. You tighten your robe and feel the comforting weight of all your pocket items like a tiny, curated museum of your personality. Historians still debate whether every samurai carried these items daily or just for special events. But hey, you're the one living it right now, and you're doing it in style. As you walk, a breeze flutters through the courtyard, and you catch the faintest scent of sandalwood. That's not you. It's probably one of the younger retainers overcompensating. You roll your eyes, which is a little tricky when you're trying to look stoic. Near the gate, a child stares up at you in awe. You give them the tiniest bow, just enough to be polite. They'll probably remember that moment forever. You, the mysterious warrior with secrets in every fold of cloth. What they won't know is that inside your sleeve is also a small sketch of a carp leaping over a waterfall, drawn by your niece last summer. Because even hardened warriors have soft spots. You just hide them better. And as you prepare to patrol the boundary wall, your fingers brush once more over your kogatana, now warm from your body heat. It's not flashy, it's not ceremonial, but it's yours. And if you had to choose between a third blade and this perfectly balanced little knife, let's just say the fruit slicing would get real awkward. You pause beneath a cherry tree. Its blossoms aren't in bloom, it's not that kind of season, but the bare limbs look appropriately poetic. A breeze nudges your sleeve, and you reach inside to pull out your inro. It's small, stacked, and beautiful, like someone turned a bento box into a work of wearable art. Yours is dark lacquer with a gold leaf depiction of Mount Fuji and a few cranes mid-flight. Real, understated drama. Inro are part container, part personality statement. Like a Gucci bag, but with more incense and fewer fake zippers. It hangs from your obi belt, held in place by a netsuki. Yours is carved into the shape of a tanuki holding a sake jug. You think it's funny. Others think it's inappropriate, which makes you like it even more. You untie the cord gently and lift off the top compartment. The faint scent of camphor rises up. Preserved herbs tucked inside for freshness or maybe to ward off sickness. You're not a doctor, but your cousin swears this stuff clears the liver chi, which sounds very serious. Beneath that, a folded paper with kanji brushed in tight, perfect lines. It's a poem, or maybe a spell. You're not sure. A monk gave it to you years ago and said it would protect your sleep. Has it worked? Who knows? But you haven't been eaten by demons yet, so the bottom tier holds your secret weapon. A tiny container of nuka, rice bran powder used to clean your face. That's right, samurai skincare. You wipe your blade with precision, sure, but you also exfoliate. Can't conquer the spiritual battlefield with clogged pores. Historians still debate whether samurai in the Edo period routinely carried cosmetics in their inro or if that was just the upper-class crowd. But again, here you are, with the rice bran and a smug look. Who's debating now? A servant passes with a tray of steaming tea. You nod respectfully. They eye your inro for half a second longer than is polite. Flex achieved. You remember once, during a rainy evening, another warrior in your unit sneered at your inro, called it fancy cup-holder jewelry. He was new and loud, and he didn't last long in the unit, not because of the inro, obviously, but let's just say that being disrespectful around guys who carry swords for a living isn't a sustainable lifestyle. You swap out the top tier for a fresh charm, this one tied with red string and painted with a symbol for safe travels. You're heading to a border village tomorrow. Rumors of unrest, some peasant mumblings, nothing serious. Still, you feel better having something spiritual with you. Also inside, a neatly folded scrap of parchment with a half-drawn map. It's from your last assignment. You don't need it anymore, but the creases are comforting. Like a paper talisman that says, "Hey, remember that time you made it back?" Just for fun, you open a hidden inner pouch, one you stitched yourself, tucked inside the silk of your robe. Inside is something nobody would expect, a lucky bean. Dried, polished, smooth. You once heard a folk tale that said beans trap evil spirits. You laughed then, but you've carried this one ever since. Here's a weird fact you've never told anyone. In the summer, you sometimes hide a coin between the in-row tiers and forget about it until autumn. Finding it months later feels like discovering treasure. Past you leaving a surprise gift, present you quietly grinning. Oh, and remember that time you were standing guard outside the daimyo's hall, and your in-row suddenly snapped open, scattering powder and paper all over the polished floor. That wasn't your finest moment. You scrambled, pretending it was all highly strategic. Like, yes, this is a cleansing ritual. Very elite. The guards didn't buy it. But they didn't say anything either. Probably because you had a tanuki. Netsuke, and absolutely no shame. The Netsuke pulls your sleeve slightly as you move. It's heavier than you remembered. Maybe the lacquer's absorbing humidity again. You make a mental note to oil it later. Or maybe you'll just let it be. Part of its charm is the wear. The tiny scratches. The way the gold flake has faded on the crane's wings. Signs of life, not damage. The bell rings across the courtyard. Morning meeting. You tighten your obi and let the in-row settle against your hip. You can feel its shape through the robe fabric, the way it curves just so against your side. People look at your swords. First always. But you know the real you is tucked inside that little box. As you walk, the cord swings gently with each step. You hear it rustle and think of how many stories it carries. That one time you kept dried fish in the bottom tier and forgot, and the entire corridor smelled like disappointment for 3 days. Or when the calligrapher's daughter asked to see your in-row, and then tried to trade it for a candy wrapper with a doodle of a fox on it. You almost said yes. The in-row is more than a container. It's your portable ritual, your pocket-sized home. It carries pieces of you, spiritual, practical, and occasionally edible. And as you pass beneath the shadow of the main tower, with its curved roof tiles and watchful stone guardians, you run one finger over the tanuki's smug little face. Because honestly, he gets you. You stop just short of the meeting hall. It's too early and the room's not ready yet. There's always someone late, probably that kid from the Eastern Quarter who thinks punctuality is a Western invention. You settle onto a wooden bench under the overhang and lean back, letting your robe loosen slightly. The air smells of wet wood and charcoal smoke. A sparrow hops close and watches you. You stare back. Your fingers reach for the in-row again, not out of necessity, just habit. The cord slides through your fingers like muscle memory. You open the bottom compartment and find your favorite item. The real star of your samurai toolkit, the toothpick. That's right. Not a hidden dagger, not a secret poison vial. A humble, thin sliver of bamboo, sharpened on both ends. Elegant, lethal, in a dental hygiene and snack extraction kind of way. You twirl it like a mini weapon and wedge it between your teeth with quiet dignity. The samurai life isn't all duels and death poems, you know. Sometimes it's lunch leftovers and that annoying sesame seed from breakfast that thinks it can win. Back in the day, toothpicks, kushi, weren't just for vanity. They were part of health rituals. People believed leftover food in the teeth caused illness. Some monks even whispered that evil spirits lodged between molars. Which, to be fair, does explain Uncle Hero's breath. And it's not just you. Every samurai worth his salt carries at least one. You've seen warriors pull them out with the same reverence as their swords. One guy even had his engraved with his clan crest. You didn't have the heart to tell him it made him look like a very aggressive dentist. There's a light squeak as someone slides open a side door and nods at you. Not your turn yet. So you lean back again and think of how this little stick, simple as it is, has been with you through more than most people. It cleaned your teeth after your first meal in battle. It kept your hands busy during that awkward dinner with the tax officials. It once saved your life when you used it to jam a stuck hinge on a temple gate so you could sneak out unseen. Historians still debate whether personal grooming items like toothpicks were strictly sanctioned in samurai etiquette or considered too casual for warrior decorum. But no one asked you. And frankly, you think there's nothing more dangerous than a man with a blade and clean gums. Once, you saw a guy get into an argument over whether round toothpicks or flat ones were superior. They almost drew swords over it, almost. But then someone brought out dried squid strips, and peace was restored. Snacks are the real diplomats of feudal Japan. You fiddle with the pick and remember a bizarre tale your old mentor once told. There was a traveling ronin who carved each of his kills into a special bamboo stick and carried them all in a pouch like trophies. You asked if that was a metaphor. He said no, and that the guy eventually used one as a makeshift blow dart. You laughed. Then he handed you a toothpick and said, "Just in case." It's funny, the things you treasure. Not the swords, they're beautiful, yes, but they're also expected, heavy with meaning, with duty. But a toothpick? That's yours. That's what you reach for when you're trying to look cool, but also when you're nervous. It's your fiddlestick, your meditation tool, your social buffer. It once broke in half during a meeting and you instinctively handed the other half to the retainer next to you. He stared, confused. You smiled. He kept it. You've been nodding at each other in corridors ever since. Also, small detail. Your toothpick case is a thing of art. Wrapped in silk, dyed with indigo, embroidered with a single white crane. You made it one rainy week when you had nothing to do and couldn't go out on patrol. Spent hours stitching in silence, like some broody war poet. Once, during a lull between missions, you taught a younger samurai how to properly carve a toothpick. From scratch. He kept whittling the tip too thin, and it snapped every time. Eventually, you said, "Maybe it's like honor. If you sharpen it too much, it breaks." He stared at you like you were either a sage or insane. You're still not sure which one you prefer. You pop the pick back into your case, tuck it into your inro, and pat the top lightly. There's something satisfying about its weight, not just physically, but knowing that inside it lives a perfect little ecosystem. Prayer slips, powders, charms, and a tool that could either clean your teeth or poke an eye out. You once caught a glimpse of a daimyo's personal inro, lacquered red with a gold sunburst design. His toothpick? Carved from ivory, inlaid with silver. A little overkill if you ask me. But sure, go ahead and turn your dental stick into a family heirloom. Very practical. The door slides open again. Time to go. You rise, adjust your inro so it doesn't swing too wildly, and step inside. But not before you press your thumb to the tiny embroidered crane on your case. For luck. Or maybe just for balance. You shift your weight as you kneel inside the meeting room. The rush of bodies entering behind you stirs the air, and with it comes that familiar scent, sharp, nose-tickling, almost medicinal. Camphor. Again. It leaks faintly from the in-row box of the senior retainer sitting one tatami mat away. You don't even have to look. That guy always carries camphor. Not because he's sick. Not because he's a merchant with herbs to sell. No, he carries it because he says it clears the mind, sharpens the senses, keeps your chi balanced and your intentions pure. Sure, and maybe it's also just because he doesn't bathe regularly. No judgment. You slide your own in-row onto your lap, flicking open the middle compartment. Careful, careful, and inhale. Yep, there it is. A few grains of your own camphor mix, sharp and clean, like biting into a pine tree while falling down. A snowy mountain. Back in the Edo period, camphor was more than just a smell. It was practically a lifestyle. Extracted from the wood of the camphor tree, Cinnamomum camphora, if you want to impress your old science teacher, it was believed to ward off disease, evil spirits, and body odor. So basically, a miracle. You remember your mother pressing it into little sachets and hiding them in your clothes. "Keep the fever away," she'd mutter. Then she'd kiss your forehead so fast you weren't sure if it actually happened. Today, every respectable samurai carries some, ground up, wrapped in silk, sometimes mixed with other herbs. Some guys go overboard. You once met one who blended.
"His with powdered pearl." Yes, pearl. Said it calmed his spirit and brightened his aura. You told him it made him smell like a haunted jewelry box. Historians still debate whether samurai believed more in the spiritual power of camphor or its medical
use. Most agree it was probably both, because when you're risking your life weekly, you take any protection you can get, even if it smells like ghost-scented cough drops. Your own mix includes a touch of dried chrysanthemum and a sliver of sandalwood. The chrysanthemum is for remembrance. At least that's what the apothecary told you when he sold it with a suspiciously poetic smile. The sandalwood? Just because it smells less like you're being hunted by forest witches. Once, during a long ride toward Osaka, your horse spooked and nearly threw you off. As you steadied yourself, your in-row swung out and the camphor compartment popped open. The smell hit your face like a gust of clarity, and weirdly enough, you felt calmer. You rubbed a pinch under your nose and muttered, "Okay, ghost tree, you win this round." The retainer next to you shifts and the air fills with another wave. His camphor is stronger, darker. You'd guess he mixes his with mugwort or clove, both good for headaches, bad for anyone within 2 feet. Another guy in the back has that dry, musty scent of pure ground sage in his in-row. Always smells like he's preparing for a funeral. And maybe he is. He's the clan's treasurer. You once heard of a ronin who sprinkled camphor around his bed every night. Said it kept demons from crawling into his dreams. Then again, he also slept with one eye open and talked to his rice bowl. So, grain of salt. There's even a story, probably fake but entertaining, about a famous samurai who died in battle, and when they opened his in-row, they found not camphor or medicine, but a tiny carved poem about the moon. No one could decide if it was romantic or unhinged. You say both. You pinch a bit of your camphor mix between 2 fingers and tap it into your sleeve hem. A quiet habit. A kind of ritual. No one notices. Or if they do, they pretend not to. That's the code here. Everyone has their own superstition, their own little ghost repellent or good luck charm, and no one calls anyone out unless things go terribly wrong. A faint breeze slips through the open window. You glance down at your inro, thumb brushing its edge. It's lacquered in matte black, nothing flashy. You had a phase once. Gold lacquer, silver inlay, the whole showy mess. But then your mentor looked at it once and said, "You planning to seduce a daimyo or win a war?" You went back to black the next day. Outside you hear the flap of a kite overhead. Probably a child's, but for a split second you imagine it's a signal, a secret code sent between spies using camphor smoke trails and sky messages. You let the fantasy sit there for a moment. Then you sneeze. Camphor. Right in the nose. Someone 2 rows over says "bless you" in a tone that sounds suspiciously like a challenge. You nod back with equal menace. Ancient Japan, where even a sneeze is a tactical maneuver. You close your inrow and feel the snap of the compartment stacking tight. There's a satisfaction in the click, like saying, "Yes, this is mine." This box, this scent, this moment of peace in the chaos. You carry a blade, yes, but this is the part of the job they don't train you for. The quiet rituals, the small smells that tie your memories together, the scent of camphor and secrets. You squat beside the riverbank, pretending to admire the reflection of a willow tree, but really, you're doing what every off-duty samurai does when no one's watching. You're cleaning your teeth with a toothpick. It's bamboo, of course. Sharpened at one end, the other slightly singed to toughen it. One of 3 you keep stashed in your sash, wrapped in rice paper like they're tiny scrolls of enlightenment. And maybe they are, when you're living on dried fish and salted. Plums, these things become holy instruments. So let's talk about what else is in your pockets. Or rather, in your koshiat, the belt region, where everything meaningful is stashed. A samurai's waistline is basically a Swiss army knife of the 17th century. Right now, besides the trusty toothpick, you've got a folding knife no longer than your pinky used for trimming paper, fruit, or solving minor etiquette disputes. A calligraphy brush with a worn cap, slightly stained with old sumi ink. 2 coin-sized lozenges of pickled plum paste. Not great, but they'll keep you alive for a day. And, tucked in a fabric sleeve tied to your obi, a short metal tool that doubles as a nail cleaner and hairpin, practical and deadly, depending on your mood. See, samurai life isn't all flashing swords and intense stares across foggy battlefields. No, it's also dental hygiene, emergency snacks, and calligraphy that doesn't make you look like a deranged squirrel wrote it. Now, the folding knife. Don't confuse this with your wakizashi. That blade is for honor. This one is for everything else. You once saw a guy use his to scrape candle wax off his tabi socks. The same guy later cut a length of silk with it to bandage a bruised hawk. Versatility is the game here. Historians still debate whether all samurai carried personal folding knives, or if it was more common among lower-ranked retainers and ronin. The fancy ones, daimyo heirs and duelists with sponsorship deals, probably didn't need one. They had servants for everything. But you clip your toenails with yours. The calligraphy brush is a whole other story. Yours was a gift from a traveling monk who told you it would bring clarity to your thoughts and strength to your strokes. Even warriors must write like poets, he said, before disappearing into a thunderstorm like some kind of wandering ink ghost. You've used that brush to send reports, sketch maps, and once, To write a haiku about constipation during a particularly bad travel week. Hey, no shame. Everyone gets blocked sometimes. Speaking of blocked, remember the toothpick? You tuck it back behind your ear, very casual. Everyone pretends they don't notice, but the secret truth is, samurai take oral care very seriously. You've got colleagues who rinse with green tea like it's mouthwash, others who chew birch twigs and claim it purifies the soul. One guy even imports dried mint leaves from Nagasaki and claims the Dutch use it for breath sorcery. You once heard of a retainer who disguised a poisoned pick inside his sash, carried two, one regular, one fatal. Legend says he offered the bad one to a rival lord during a tense parley. The guy died mid-sentence. That's either strategy or hygiene weaponized. Both, maybe. Now, the little plum paste lozenges. Umeboshi, technically. You keep two at all times. They're like sour lifesavers, good for headaches, bad tempers, stomach cramps, or impressing women who think bitterness equals masculinity. You once gave one to a merchant's daughter. She puckered her face so hard, she sneezed it back out. Romance dead. And finally, that multi-use metal tool. Not quite a knife, not quite a nail file. You use it for prying things open, straightening hairpins, flicking pebbles at annoying frogs. Someone told you it was originally a tool for fixing arrowheads, but it now mostly fixes your afternoon boredom. You sometimes wonder if these pocket tools say more about you than your sword ever could. Swords are all about ceremony. These little things, they're about survival, and it's not just you. Everyone's got their quirks. The guy across the courtyard, he's got a hollow bone whistle carved to sound like a bird. Used it once to call, for backup during an ambush, or so he claims. You think he just likes birds. Another guy keeps a tiny mirror, round and polished smooth, that he checks obsessively. Says it reflects evil spirits. You say it reflects his insecurity. But hey, to each their own. There's an old warrior in the southern district who carries dried orange peel in a lacquered tube. Says it helps with digestion and homesickness. You tried it once. It made your mouth feel like a festival had ended early. Historians agree that samurai carried a surprising variety of tools. Sometimes functional, sometimes ceremonial, sometimes just plain weird. Some carried tiny folding fans for secret code signaling. Others had charms made from fox bones. There's even record of one lord who insisted his retainers carry gold leaf in case of sudden death, so their corpses would shine like the righteous. Vanity, but make it spiritual. You wrap your calligraphy brush in its cloth, tuck it back inside your robe, and pat your sash. Toothpick, knife, plums, brush, metal stick of minor usefulness. Check. You feel more armed than when carrying two blades. As the sun tilts low, casting the riverbank in gold, you stand up. A breeze stirs your sleeve, brushing your cheek with the scent of umeboshi and ink. Soft, sour, purposeful. Your reflection wavers on the water, quiet, incomplete. A warrior, who's more than just a sword. You're on a road just outside Edo. It's been raining, the kind of rain that doesn't fall in sheets, but in a slow, patient drizzle that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel soggy, even your thoughts. You're walking alone. That's normal. You're hungry. Also normal. What's not normal is the way your right foot keeps slipping ever so slightly with every step. The sole of your waraji, your straw sandal, is fraying. You felt it start to give out an hour ago, and now it's unraveling like your patience. You know you should stop. Take a minute, retie it, patch it. Do something before it trips you and breaks your nose on the next muddy rock, but you don't, because you're a samurai. And sometimes, samurai are idiots. You keep walking, and as expected, the sandal finally betrays you. You slide on a patch of wet moss, stumble forward, and crash down hard. Your elbow hits the edge of a stone. Your shoulder wrenches. You're not bleeding, but something feels off. And that's the moment it hits you, not the pain, but the shame. Not because you fell, but because you fell like a peasant. No style, no honor. Just a muddy splash and a grunt that would make your ancestors face palm from the afterlife. You sit there for a moment, rain dripping from your hair into your eyes, and you think, am I actually invincible, or have I just been lucky? Because this is what no one tells you about being a samurai. You don't die in glory every day. You die in slips, twists, infections. You die from bad fish, from falling off a horse, from brushing against the wrong clan on the wrong day. There's a scroll in your clan's archive. You've read it a dozen times. It lists every samurai in your line who's died in battle. It's a proud document, but there's another scroll, hidden, less glamorous. It lists the samurai who died of infected blisters, or snake bites, or falling asleep drunk and rolling into the river. You think about that scroll more than you admit. The code of Bushido teaches discipline, honor, loyalty. But what it doesn't say, what your sensei only hints at when he's drunk, is that all of that can be undone by one stupid moment, one rusty nail, one misstep on a wet bridge, one bite of sashimi left out too long in the summer heat. That's why you carry the folding knife, the toothpick, the little tools, not just to survive battles, but to survive life. The samurai in the scrolls, the ones whose names are carved into stone, they weren't better than you. They were just luckier, or smarter about small things. There's a saying an old woman once told you, back when you were stationed near the coast. You only need a sword once in your life. You need strong feet every day. You didn't understand it then. You thought it was just peasant wisdom, born from hauling fish and walking barefoot. Now, sitting in the mud with your wrist throbbing and your sandal dangling like a dead eel, you finally get it. So you fix the sandal, not elegantly. You rip a strip from your inner robe and tie it tight. Then you stand, slowly, carefully. You adjust the knot of your sash, brush the mud from your sleeve, spit into the bushes just to feel manly again. Then you keep walking, because you're a samurai. And being a samurai isn't about never falling. It's about how you get back up when you do. You're perched on a low wooden bench outside a roadside tea house, pretending not to eavesdrop on the drunk merchant 2 feet to your left. He's bragging to his companions about the coin he made smuggling silk. His voice is loud, his gestures exaggerated, and you wonder briefly if he knows that half the people in this town report directly to the shogun. You sip lukewarm barley tea from a cracked ceramic cup and let your fingers wander along the folds of your sash. You're not bored, just checking. Your fingers find it instantly, the small carved bamboo case. You pop it open with your thumb and pull out a thin wooden pick. Slide it between your back teeth. Wiggle it. Satisfaction. There's nothing quite like clearing that bit of grilled mackerel that's been stuck back there since breakfast. You sigh through your nose. You're not proud, but you're honest. This might be the best moment of your entire day. Because here's the unspoken truth. Samurai are obsessed with their teeth, not because of vanity, though a nice grin doesn't hurt when negotiating a rice shipment. It's survival. Rotten teeth? That's the gateway drug to death by infection. A little gum pain turns into a pus-filled abscess, and then you're feverish, delirious, and dying in a ditch somewhere outside Kyoto, while a crow eyes your last rice ball. So yes, you carry a toothpick. Actually, you carry 3. 1 plain. 1 wrapped in silver thread, 1 sharpened into a tiny dagger, because honestly, why not? You tuck the pick back into the case and reach for another item, your favorite one, a sake cup, wooden, lacquered, red on the inside. Fits perfectly in your palm like it was made for your hand and no one else's. There's a notch in the rim, where you bit it once during a night you can't fully remember, and now it's just part of its charm. You don't drink much anymore, not like you did during your early years in the capital. But the sake cup stays. Always. Because it's not really about the drinking. It's about the ritual, the calming of the nerves, the moment before a duel when you sip, just a little, and stare your opponent down with the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't flinch. Also, in a pinch, it makes a great tool for measuring rice. You learned that the hard way during the famine of 1629, when the granaries ran low, and every family tried to out-cheat the next. You used your sake cup to portion out your rations, and somehow it made you feel in control. Like you had a system. Like you wouldn't be the first to go hungry. Now it rides with you always, nestled beside the flint striker, the steel whetstone, and the tiny oilcloth for your blade. It clinks softly when you walk, like a lullaby only you can hear. And then, of course, there's the blade itself. Not your katana. No, this one is smaller, sharper, closer. A kogatana, your utility knife. Everyone thinks the samurai only ever use swords, but what they don't see are the thousands of times your kogatana saved your life. Cutting through rope, skinning a rabbit, sharpening bamboo stakes for your fire pit, cleaning under your nails before visiting a nobleman's estate. It's not glamorous. It's not ceremonial. It's just necessary. There's a dull line of rust along the base from the time you dropped it in the salt marsh. You could polish it out, but you like it there. It's a memory, a scar. You once met a monk who said that every tool carries the karma of its past uses. You laughed at the time, but now, every time you touch your kogatana, you think of that one. Moment you used it to free a child from a snare trap in the forest. You didn't do it for thanks. You just did it. But sometimes when you hold the knife, you swear you can feel that kid's little fingers gripping your wrist. So yeah, you keep the blade close. You wrap the handle in faded blue silk, taken from an old love who never quite waited for you, and you slide it into its black lacquer sheath with a soft click. Toothpick, sake cup, utility blade, the holy trinity of the pocket samurai. You lean back on the bench. The merchant is still talking, now about dried persimmons and why his are imported from only the most honorable cliffs. You snort quietly and finish your tea, and for a moment you realize this is the core of your life. Not the duels, not the drama, not the flashy armor. It's the tiny objects, hidden in your robes, that remind you of who you are, that keep you human, that whisper softly when the night is dark and the road is long, you're still here, you're still sharp, you're still you. You squat near the edge of a slow-moving creek, watching a frog inflate and deflate like it's sighing about something it can't change. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's the way the dragonflies keep buzzing too close to its head. Or maybe it's just being a frog. You roll a smooth stone in your palm and breathe in the earthy scent of wet moss. From inside your sleeve, you pull out a tiny satchel, faded cloth, stained at the corners, tied with a bit of twine that once belonged to someone you don't talk about anymore. Inside are things no one expects from a samurai. Dried herbs, a copper, coin, a red thread tied in 7 knots, a tooth from a weasel maybe, or a fox. Hard to tell now. You carry it not because you believe in ghosts or curses, though, to be honest, you're not in a hurry to test your luck either. You carry it because your grandmother swore it saved her life. And when she pressed it into your hands at your genpuku ceremony, eyes shining with the gravity of old women who've seen too much, you promised her you'd never let it go. So you haven't. It doesn't take up much room. It smells a little like camphor and regret. But in the darkest hours of the night, when you're lying on your back in a thatch roof hut with wind groaning through the rafters, your hand finds it without thinking, and you remember her voice, scratchy like rice paper, whispering about river, spirits and temple bells and a samurai who didn't laugh when death came calling. Historians still debate whether such charms actually influenced battlefield outcomes, but the fact is, they were everywhere, carried by peasants. Stashed in the obi of high-ranking generals, sewn into the linings of armor, you were nobody if you didn't have at least one. Yours isn't fancy. There's no jade or gold. But the cloth is from a shrine, and the thread is red, and that's supposed to keep demons confused. Next to the charm pouch in your inner pocket is another little mystery. An herbal packet wrapped in mulberry paper. Crushed dried leaves with a scent like mint and pepper. You found the recipe scribbled on a scroll in a monastery once, along with illustrations of men with wild eyes and twisted knees. The caption simply read, "Good for clarity, and the wind in the body." You've used it maybe twice, once before a duel when you hadn't slept for 2 days, and once after a fever that left you hearing bells in your dreams. Both times it worked, or you convinced yourself it did. Does that matter? Not really, because being a samurai isn't just swords and scrolls. It's survival, adaptation, believing in something, even if it's the power of stinky leaves and a string of knots. You remember a captain you served under in your early 20s. Big man, loud voice, swore by a potion made from burnt eel bones, plum vinegar, and the tears of a hungry dog. Swore it cured anything. One time you caught him sneaking it into his morning tea, swishing it around like it was the elixir of life. He died of heartburn at 38. Still, you admired the commitment. You tuck the herb bundle back into your sleeve and pull out another small item. A thin piece of wood, half the length of your little finger. Smooth, polished, carved with kanji. A prayer tablet, not from a temple. No, this one's homemade. You etched it yourself after your friend Ojiro took a spear through the chest and didn't make it to the healer. You sat by the river that night and carved his name, and below it, a promise. To be better. It's not deep. The characters are wobbly. But it's yours. The prayer tablet isn't magic. But sometimes, when you hold it tight before sleep, it feels like a tether. A reminder that you don't fight for glory. You fight because someone once mattered to you, and now they're gone, and you're still here. And that's a kind of medicine, too. You scratch your ankle and feel the bump of another forgotten treasure. 2 tiny round beans, hard as stone. Not for eating, for counting, for remembering. They're part of a children's game you once played with a girl in a mountain village. She said if you made a wish on one and kept it warm in your pocket for 100 days, it would come true. You're at day 97. You don't even remember the wish, but the bean is still there. That counts for something, right? The frog lets out a sharp croak and leaps into the water, breaking the moment. You smile. Some samurai carry maps, some carry spare bowstrings. Some, like the man you once saw in Edo, carry a mirror to check if their soul still lives behind their eyes. You carry tiny things, useless things maybe, but they carry you too. So when your fingers brush the satchel of herbs, or the carved wood, or the long-dead weasel tooth, you don't laugh. You nod. You whisper, "Still here." And you keep walking. Because superstition, it turns out, makes a fine traveling companion. And just like the frog, you've learned that staying alive isn't always about knowing the right direction. Sometimes, it's about knowing what to carry when the path disappears entirely. You crouch near a low campfire, half covered with a flat rock to dull the smoke. Embers snap and mutter like a grumpy old uncle. Your boots are damp, your legs ache, and your horse smells like he's made of wet rope, which, to be fair, he sort of is. You dig into your pocket, not the weapon side, the other one. The pocket reserved for tools, not threats. Out comes a bundle wrapped in thin, oiled cloth. You flick it open and reveal your fire-starting kit. Dried pine shavings, a few sticks of sulfur-touched tinder, and 2 lumps of black stone, flint, shaped to fit snugly between calloused fingers. The iron striker, nearly worn smooth, is tied with a loop of leather. Every samurai has one. No matter how prestigious, how noble, how full of poems and scrolls and ego. Because when the night falls and the rice is still raw, even a daimyo needs fire to keep from gnawing on his own sandals. You
strike flint against steel. Once, twice. The sparks catch. Flame blossoms. Now your hands smell like brimstone.
You like it. Historians still debate whether fire-starting kits were universally standardized or more of a regional quirk, but based on your own experience, they're as personal as undergarments. Some samurai swear by dry moss, others by cedar, bark. You once met a warrior from Kyushu who used shaved silk soaked in lamp oil. He lit his pipe with a flick like a stage magician and told stories about dragons that lived in volcanoes. He later burned down a shed trying to dry his gloves too close to the flame. You never lent him anything again. With the fire crackling now, you pull out your inkstone. It's a little luxury, really. Not everyone carries one, but you do. It's wrapped in cotton cloth. A snug little bundle that cradles a rectangular slab of slate. You run your finger across it. It's smooth, except for the groove worn down one side where your brush always lands first. You set it down gently, then retrieve your ink block. Solid black, fragrant, made with soot and animal glue. It smells faintly of pine smoke and old temples. You've had this one for 3 years. The edge is chipped where you dropped it during a rainstorm, and you swore so loudly even the crows looked offended. A few drops of water from your gourd, a slow grind of ink into the well, and then your writing brush, pulled from its bamboo case. The tip is stiff, reluctant, until it meets the liquid and drinks deep. You take out your writing paper, folded sheets, creased from travel. Some already filled with the ramblings of past nights, half-finished poems, maps of dreams, a letter to someone who never answered. Tonight, you draw. Not a map or a battle plan, just lines, loops, the outline of your horse's ear, the twist of smoke. A half-remembered mountain from 3 weeks ago, rising behind your eyes. You draw not because you're good, but because it slows the world. It gives your mind something quiet to do. Like sweeping a shrine floor no one walks on. Speaking of shrines, you reach once more into your pocket and take out something old, older than your service, maybe even older than your father's name. A miniature kamidana, a household altar, shrunk. Down for travel. Just 2 inches wide, carved from hinoki cypress, smooth and pale and warm to the touch. Its doors are sealed with thread, not meant to be opened outside of ritual. Inside, there's nothing. And everything. A sliver of paper from a Shinto priest. A whispered blessing. Maybe the scent of your mother's kitchen, lingering there like a ghost who didn't get the memo. You don't pray out loud. That's not how this works. But you hold it close sometimes, especially when thunder rolls in from the coast, or when a bird calls your name in the middle of the night and it sounds just a little too much like your brother. You don't always believe, but you respect. It's safer that way. The sky is violet now, the kind of dusky velvet that makes even the stars seem reluctant to shine. You add a few more shavings to the fire. The ink on your paper begins to dry, curling slightly as it cools. And then you remember something, tucked in the last fold of your pouch, a charm against fire. No, really. It's a folded amulet given to you by a blind monk in Osaka, traded for a pair of sandals and a bite of dried persimmon. He said it was blessed by a water spirit who lived inside a well and kept his mustache braided. You didn't ask questions. You just said, "Thank you," and put it away. Now, you unfold it. The paper is blue, stamped with strange kanji, and it smells like mildew and pepper. It's probably nothing. But still, you slip it under your fire kit anyway, just in case. You've seen tents go up in flames like a rice paper lantern in a typhoon. You once lost half your eyebrows to a cooking accident involving fish oil and poor judgment. So yeah, superstitions or not, you're not above an extra layer of protection. Your horse nickers in his sleep, his legs twitching like he's dreaming of open fields or maybe a better owner. You smile and roll your inkstone back into its cloth. One last glance at the kamidana. One more brush of your fingers across the paper. Then you close your eyes. Fire crackling. Brush drying. Gods watching. This is the life you chose. And for tonight it feels enough. The morning is damp, not raining. Just the kind of wet that makes the world feel like it's exhaling on your neck. You unroll your travel kit again, careful this time. The ink has dried stiff in the stone. The brush bristles are reluctant to wake, and your fingers ache from sleeping on your own arm. You sit cross-legged beneath a half-dead pine, its needles patchy like a bad haircut. The birds are quiet. Even they seem tired. Today it's not for poetry. Today it's for records. You reach for your scroll. This one isn't pretty. It's not bound in silk or sealed with gold ink. It's a roll of cheap mulberry paper, rough on the skin, folded into concertina layers. But it holds your truth, your trail, your version of things. There are better record keepers, sure. Accountants in the court, scribes with fine calligraphy and voices like cold wind. But none of them walked through the mud with you. None of them cleaned a blade at midnight or buried a friend under pine needles while pretending not to cry. So this scroll, it matters. You write slowly. Your brush scratches a little. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're trying to remember. 3rd month, 12th day. Camped near the pass west of Minokami. One man lost, Kato from Sagami. Throat wound, no cry, good death. That's all he gets. That's all any of you get. Space is limited, memory is not. You keep going. Notes about terrain, supplies, account of arrows. The name of a farmer who gave you rice balls for nothing. You write it all down, not because anyone asked you to, but because you know too well how easily the world forgets. Samurai don't just fight. They document. They preserve. Because if you don't write your own story, someone else will. And they'll get it wrong. You've seen it happen. There was a battle 3 years ago, a skirmish really. Your unit flanked left, pinned the enemy, broke the line. But when the tale made it back to the capital, the credit went to a daimyo's cousin who'd spent the entire fight hiding behind a cart full of pickles. He became a hero. You became a footnote. So now you write, even if no one reads it, even if the ink fades, because writing is resistance, writing is armor, writing is the only way a soldier can bleed without dying. And sometimes, if you're lucky, writing is survival. You fold the paper again, tighter this time. Wrap it in a strip of cotton cloth and tuck it inside your pack, behind the spare sandals and the emergency radish pickle. Then, you take out another scroll. This one's different, thinner, personal, not a log, not a list. A letter unsent. You've rewritten it 3 times in the last month. The first version was too stiff. The second was too soft. This one feels right, maybe. You open it and read it again. Dear Kana, I saw a heron yesterday. Just standing there, 1 foot in the water, like it had nowhere better to be. I thought of you. The days are long, and the nights are longer. I'm tired, but I'm not lost. If the rains come early, I'll head east. The hills are safer. I hope your garden is blooming. I still remember the smell of plum blossoms in your sleeves. Yours always. You read it twice. Then fold it slowly. No envelope. Just a tie of thread, and your promise to carry it forward until... There's a place to send it. Some samurai never write home. It hurts too much. Others write obsessively, chasing the ghost of peace across parchment. You fall somewhere in between. But this page, it reminds you why you fight. Not for honor. Not for your lord. Not even for victory. You fight so there's still a world left where letters can be delivered, and gardens can bloom and plum blossoms can be crushed into sleeves by accident on warm spring afternoons. You pack it all away. The scrolls, the brush, the hope. Then you stand. The clouds are clearing just a little, it's enough. The clang of metal is quieter when it's worn by someone tired. You shift your weight, feeling the weight of the tachi on your left hip, the short wakizashi tucked behind it. They move with you now, like bones you weren't born with but grew into. But tonight, you're not thinking about swords in battle. You're thinking about cooking. Because in your pouch, nestled between flint and dried kelp, is a tiny iron trinket that saved your life more times than the blade ever has. Aye, pocket knife. Not glamorous, not blessed by a priest. Just sharp, foldable, and criminally good at peeling daikon. You crouch by the stream, wiping mud off the blade. A trout, dumb and silver, kicks in a woven trap. You haven't eaten fresh meat in 2 days. The rice is nearly gone. The pickles are angry at this point, so sour they insult you back when you bite them. Time to clean the fish. And here's where you marvel. Not at the poetry of nature, but at the weird contrast of it all. You carry weapons that can disembowel a horse, yet tonight, your battlefield is a cutting board made from the lid of a broken travel box, and your weapon is this 3-inch sliver of sharpened utility. A little sake, a pinch of salt from your pouch, a leaf of sancho for bite. You wrap the fish in reed and rest it over the coals like you know what you're doing. The truth is, you're just hoping it doesn't fall in. Beside you, another samurai is boiling water. He adds dried mushrooms to the pot like he's composing. A haiku. 1 piece for umami, 1 for memory, and 1 just because he likes the squish. You know, he mutters, my grandfather never fought in a single battle. But he could make a mushroom broth so good it made grown men cry. You nod. You believe him. Because in a world where blood and blade are so often center stage, sometimes it's the soft things, soup, letters, a good night's sleep, that carry the real weight. Historians still debate whether samurai always carried personal tools like knives, small saws, or even tweezers for removing splinters. Some say yes, citing excavation kits from Edo-era campsites. Others roll their eyes and say it's just wishful thinking by scholars who've never actually camped. You don't need the debate. You've used your little knife to cut food, whittle, firewood, pick rocks from your sandals, and once, yes, seriously, pluck a leech off a very uncomfortable place. The tools of war get all the poetry. The tools of living get tucked in pouches and forgotten. But here's the thing. The tachi looks great on a wall, but it won't help you gut a trout or build a shelter in the rain. You've seen green recruits carrying 3 blades and not a single cup. They last about 2 weeks. You sip the broth from a dented tin cup. It's mushroomy. It's hot. It's possibly boiling your tongue. Luxury. You remember a winter march, too. Years ago, when the only food you had was snow flavored with vinegar. You cried, but only because your lips cracked and the tears froze to your face. Tonight is better. You pass the cup to your companion. He slurps without shame. The fire crackles. The trout holds together. The sky is doing that thing where it pretends to be clear while secretly plotting rain. You pull your blanket tighter and roll the knife in its cloth sleeve. Samurai travel kits were often personalized. Some carried fire starters, chopsticks, even a mirror. Yes, a mirror. Not for vanity, though don't discount it. After all, even warriors like to check for rice in their teeth. More practically, it was for light signaling or inspecting wounds. In places you really can't see on your own. One friend of yours swears by his tiny folding spoon. Another keeps a miniature whetstone the size of a tooth, just in case his blade dulls mid-sentence. You carry a second knife, not for fighting, just in case someone else forgets theirs. Nothing says professional like loaning out cutlery. Joke floats around camp. You can tell a good samurai by his toolkit, not his sword. The older men laugh when they say it, but there's truth in the corners of their eyes. As the fire dies down and the sky gives up pretending, you lie back, on the ground, arms behind your head. The little knife is tucked under your blanket, wrapped tight like a secret. You don't dream of glory tonight. You dream of rice that isn't cold, and maybe a spoon with a curved handle so it doesn't fall into your soup. Simple things. But that's what tools are for, isn't it? Not just survival, continuity, comfort, control in a world where you have so little of it. The ink's dry, but your hand still smells like pine soot. You roll the paper slowly, tucking it into the bamboo case with the care of someone handling a bird's feather, delicate, vital, and likely to flutter away with one bad wind. Then, with a practiced flick, you seal it with wax and press your name ring into it, the mark of you pressed into permanence. Not that it matters. In a week, someone will break it open, read what you wrote, and either frown or send a runner with a knife. But for now, you're safe. And the scroll? That's just another one of the small, silent things you carry every day. Not a sword, not a rope. Just words. Inside your pouch, hidden behind the flint, a folded rice paper packet holds 3 official travel permits. One stamped in red with your clan's sigil, one in black from the magistrate at Hakone Pass, and one in blue, a forgery so good you almost believe it yourself. You learn to carry extra documents after a certain incident on the Tokaido Road, involving a suspicious checkpoint officer, a very unlucky merchant, and a bottle of sake that definitely wasn't yours. Now you don't travel light. You travel prepared. Historians still debate whether samurai were required to carry written orders at all times, or if some simply relied on clan insignias. The truth likely falls somewhere in between. Some walked with scrolls so dense they could stun a thief, while others preferred a polite nod and a very visible sword. But not everything in your pouch is legal. Next to the scrolls, tucked into a stitched leather sleeve, is a little paper talisman. It's not from any temple, you know. A faded drawing of a fox with too many eyes stares back at you. You got it from a traveling monk who said it would watch your back better than your friends. You've never decided if that was a blessing or an insult. Still, you keep it. Superstition? Maybe. But so far it's worked. You're not dead. Yet. You also carry a few letters, not orders, not permits, just letters. One from your mother, written in characters so round they look like dumplings. She wrote it before your first campaign. It's stained with tea, and the crease lines are nearly worn through, but it still smells like her. Salt and dried plum. Another is from a girl in Edo. You don't read it often, not because you don't care, but because the words make something soft ache in your chest. Her handwriting loops like willow branches. She always ends her letters with, "Come home hungry, I'll cook." You hope she's still waiting. Of course, not all writing is warm. In a separate pouch, kept close to your skin, is a small folded square of thick paper. No seal, no ink, just a list of names in faint charcoal. 4 names. 3 are crossed out, the last one isn't. You don't look at it often. You don't need to. You know the name by heart. When the time comes, you'll act like it's just another order, just another scrap of paper in the stack. But you know it isn't. That name is personal. You shift your weight on the tatami mat, reaching into your robes and pulling out your personal seal. It's heavy for something the size of your thumb, carved from polished jade. A gift from your father. He said, "Your word is nothing without this," then added, "Neither is your debt." You didn't understand that part until later. You rub, your thumb across the seal's smooth surface. Even now, years after receiving it, you sometimes forget which kanji he had carved into the base. Not your real name. That would be too easy. No. This name is a cipher. A name known only to those who matter. A name that won't get you killed if the wrong person sees it. Every samurai has more than one name. There's the birth name, the one your parents whispered into your swaddled ears. The warrior name, given when you first trained in armor and bled on purpose. Then the road name, often made up on the spot, useful when inns ask too many questions. And finally, the secret. Name, the one you write when you're speaking for the clan, or for someone even higher. You've signed it with ink, signed it in blood, signed it once on a stone and tossed it into the ocean. Names are weapons, just like swords, sometimes sharper. Your friend across the fire has a different approach. He uses a wooden stamp shaped like a rabbit. Says it's for luck. Says it makes people think he's too ridiculous to be dangerous. He's not. He killed 2 men last winter with a chopstick. Another scroll slips from your pouch as you stretch. You unfold it absent-mindedly. It's a map, hand-drawn, showing a series of checkpoints and rice barns. On the back, someone scribbled a joke about a monk, a merchant, and a badly placed rice barrel. You smile. Maps are often drawn like stories, compressed space, implied danger. You trust your memory more, but the ink is comforting. Someone else has walked this road before. Someone made it home. You fold the map, tuck it away, and feel the weight of all your papers pressing lightly against your chest. Weapons can be stolen. Horses run off. But knowledge, seals, codes, those stay with you. As the night air creeps in, you roll onto your side, one hand resting on the bamboo scroll case. There's a comfort in paperwork, a strange, administrative kind of safety. Because in a world of blades and betrayal, sometimes, your best shield is a well-folded document and a convincing signature. They say samurai don't feel pain, that once you commit to Bushido, to the path of the blade, your nerves burn off like morning mist. That's a lie. You feel everything, the cracked skin on your fingers from too many nights gripping sword hilts. In the cold, the dull throb in your left knee from a fall during your first campaign. You told everyone you landed on a rock. Truth is, you panicked, hesitated, slipped. You never hesitated again. But the pain, it stayed. It still clicks when it rains. No one talks about how weather becomes your enemy. Not snow or storms, those you expect. You dress for them, wrap your feet tight, layer your underrobes and oil your cloak. But humidity? That's the true killer. It seeps into your clothes, your blades, your bones. Your armor smells like wet straw and regret. Your swords rust. Faster. Your scrolls buckle at the edges. Ink blurs into midnight stains. Every time you unsheath your weapon, it sticks. Just a second, barely noticeable. But in a duel, a second is forever. So you learn little tricks. You sleep with your blade unsheathed on dry nights. You tuck oilcloth under your armpits. You carry crushed camphor leaves, not for scent, but to keep the mold off your pack. Still, nothing helps the knee. The old woman in the last village offered to bind it, said she used to treat wrestlers in Kyoto before the fire. She wrapped it in silk soaked in vinegar and foxglove. It burned for hours. You let her do it anyway. Sometimes you wonder if pain is the price of memory. Because every wound tells a story. There's the scar on your shoulder, that one from a spear thrust during a mountain ambush. The Ashigaru who landed it couldn't have been older than 14. His hands shook. His mouth was open like he wanted to speak. But you are faster. You still see his face sometimes, or the slice along your rib, low and thin like a smile. That was from a duel, not official, not sanctioned. Just two warriors too proud to back down after a spilled drink and a misread proverb. You won. He bled out in the grass. But he laughed as he died. Told you your form was graceful for a farmer. He wasn't wrong. What they never tell you is how much of the job is waiting for orders, waiting for horses, waiting for wounds to close, for infections to recede, for the weather to shift in your favor. Sometimes you think the hardest part of being a samurai isn't the killing, it's the patience. You sit still so often your body forgets how to move. Quickly, your calluses soften, your joints stiffen, your sword grows bored. You have to keep the edge sharp, on your blade, on your mind. So you train. Even on bad days, especially on bad days, you practice draws with numb fingers. Spar alone using tree trunks as enemies. Swing your bakken until your arms scream, not to prove anything, but because stopping means softening. You talk to yourself. More now. Not out loud. Not like a madman. Just quietly. Inside. You recite your father's teachings. You list every man you fought. You review the names of every commander, every gate guard, every innkeeper who ever gave you a free bowl of rice. They're not lessons. They're anchors. Because here's another truth they don't teach. The road makes ghosts, not the supernatural kind. The real kind. The kind that speak to you in familiar voices when the wind hits just right. The ones you didn't save. The ones you couldn't. The ones you had to kill. You carry them all. Not in your bag, not in your scrolls. Inside. In your joints. In your sleep. In the way you avoid mirrors when you've been drinking. The weight of the katana is nothing compared to that. But you get used to it, or you pretend to, because there's still work to be done. There's always another order, another journey, another fight that won't wait for your knee to stop aching. So you wrap it tighter, tuck your pain deep, and walk like nothing's wrong, because, for a samurai, hurting doesn't matter. Only moving forward does, even if every step burns like fire. There's a pouch you keep tied close to your waist, tucked under your obi, hidden just enough so curious eyes don't ask. It's not big, just a small silk envelope, embroidered with faded red thread and fraying at the corners. If someone else found it, they might toss it away, thinking it held nothing of value. But inside, everything. You carry it not because you're sentimental, but because without it, you're not sure what's left of you. There's a lock of hair, coarse and dark, still smelling faintly of camellia oil. You haven't touched it in years, but you know exactly what it feels like between your fingers. She gave it to you when you left for Edo. Said she'd wait. She didn't. You keep the hair anyway. Some nights, it's all that keeps your chest from caving in. There's a tiny wooden carving, no longer than your thumb. A frog, oddly shaped, eyes too wide. You carved it yourself when you were a boy, sitting under the cypress tree behind your father's house. Your brother dared you to make a guardian beast. You failed. It looks more like a squashed peach than a fearsome spirit. But he laughed, said it would keep you safe anyway. It hasn't worked yet. Still, you carry it. There's also a coin, a kane tsuho, smooth with age. It's not worth much. Not anymore. But it was the first coin you ever earned. Not from war. From work. You spent 3 days helping a tanner clean pelts. The smell still haunts you. But when the man dropped that coin in your hand, you felt something strange. Pride. Not for the labor, but for being needed. No sword required, and there's a scrap of paper. Just a line of poetry. Even the moon forgets to shine when the river weeps. You copied it from a shrine wall on a rainy morning, years ago, when your feet ached and your soul felt hollow. You never knew who wrote it, and maybe that's better. It feels like it was written for you anyway. These aren't war trophies. They're not symbols of honor or rank. They're just proof. Proof that you existed beyond the armor. That you felt things. That someone, somewhere, once made you laugh, and you carry them like a second heartbeat. Not because you're weak, but because you're still human. You wish more people understood that about samurai. That it's not just about stoicism and skill. It's about endurance. About how you keep showing up, bruised, bent, sometimes bleeding, but never backing down. Your daimyo doesn't know about the pouch. Your comrades wouldn't ask. There's an unspoken rule. Everyone carries something, but no one speaks of it. You've seen the others, clutching small charms or whispered names in their sleep. One man carries a broken flute, never plays it, just polishes it with obsessive care. Another wears an earring from a lost lover, hidden under his helmet strap. We all pretend to be stone, but beneath the steel, we're paper, and every fold tells a story. Now, tonight, as you sit under a creaking pine, sharpening your blade by firelight, you glance down at the pouch again. You're tired. More than usual. Your knee aches. Your ribs still sting from the last encounter with bandits who didn't know better. Your right hand is numb from the cold, and your left ear won't stop ringing. But the fire crackles. The stars peek out through the cloud breaks. Somewhere an owl calls. And for a brief, stolen moment, you feel almost calm. Almost. Because in the morning you'll ride again. You'll follow orders. Keep your eyes open. Keep your blade ready. And you'll carry the pouch. You'll carry it through rain and snow, through blood and tea shops, past temples and stables and towns that never quite feel like home. Because that's what being a samurai means, in the end. You don't stop. You don't crumble. You just keep moving forward, full of secrets and held together by invisible thread. Not because you're fearless, but because you know exactly what you're fighting to protect. It's nearly dawn, and the horizon is just starting to bleed into pale pinks and bruised purples. The world is still hushed. The kind of silence that feels sacred, like a held breath. You sit beneath a half-dead tree, your back against the rough bark, fingers playing absently with the fabric of your left sleeve. There's something tucked inside, as always. No, not a weapon. Not today. You've got your wakizashi tied to your side, of course, and your katana, well, it never leaves your reach. But what's hidden inside your sleeve isn't steel. It's paper, a letter, folded and folded again until it's as thin as a whisper. Ink faded, corners rubbed smooth by your thumb over countless months. You haven't read it in years. You don't need to. You've memorized every word, every shaky character. It begins with "my dearest" and ends with "come back if you can," and in the middle, a truth you're still not sure you deserved. Love. That's the last thing people expect you to carry. And yet, here it is. Pressed against your arm like a secret you hope the wind won't steal. The samurai image they paint is all blood and glory and stiff-necked honor. But what they never tell you is how much of your time is spent just waiting. For orders, for meals, for the next war, for a sign. And in those spaces between battles, when you're not killing or marching, or bowing, you think, maybe too much. You think about home, if that's even still a place. You think about that letter, about the smell of rice fields in the early morning, about a voice you haven't heard in half your life. Sometimes you wonder if all this discipline, all this silence, is just armor for your heart. Historians still debate whether the romanticized version of the samurai ever truly existed. Whether the Bushido code was real or just retrofitted mythology. Whether any of you were as noble as the scrolls say, but here's what they never seem to ask. What did it feel like? To be in that armor, to wake up every morning not knowing if you'd be alive by nightfall, to shoulder centuries of tradition and still try to be a person under all of it. You're not a hero. You're not a villain either. You're just someone trying to hold it together in a world that demands perfection and punishes hesitation. So you carry the things that matter, the knife for protection, the toothpick for comfort, the incense for clarity, the coin for memory, the letter for hope. And maybe the hope is foolish. Maybe it's been years too long, and there's no one left at that house by the river. But what if there is? What if they've waited, even now, lighting a candle every night and whispering your name into the dark? You fold the letter again and slide it back into the sleeve, close to your skin. The sun is higher now, peeking through the bare branches, like golden threads being pulled across the sky. You stand, stretch, breathe. It's time. Your horse stamps its hooves in the frost. You tighten your sash, adjust your sleeves, pick up your pack, lighter than it was a year ago, but somehow heavier, in the places that count. You swing into the saddle, feeling the familiar creak of worn leather and aching joints. Ahead lies another assignment. Another border town, another show of presence. But somewhere past that, somewhere down the long, winding roads of fate, maybe there's rest. A warm cup of tea. A door that opens without suspicion. Someone who remembers. And even if that's just a dream, you'll keep riding toward it, because you're not just a man with swords and scrolls and pouches. You're a vessel for stories, for dreams that refuse to die, for small, fluttering things that somehow survived all the fire and fury. You are what the scrolls left out, the in-between, the heartbeat beneath the helmet, the hand in the sleeve. And tonight, just for a moment, the world feels gentle enough to let you remember that. You've just taken a long, quiet ride through the daily life of a 17th-century samurai. Not the armor-polished version written in textbooks, but the soft, vulnerable one history often forgets. The kind who carries toothpicks and love letters alongside his blades. We explored the strange and practical things hidden in their sleeves and pockets, from flintstones and incense sticks to charms, medicine packets, and even a squashed wooden frog. We met the man under the mask, not just a warrior, but a person, full of contradictions, fears, tiny habits, and hopes that defy the violence of his world. Through 15 winding parts, we lingered in stolen moments, sharpening a blade by moonlight, chewing pickled plums in the snow, memorizing the smell of home from a scrap of cloth. We glimpsed how a samurai could be stoic on the battlefield, yet utterly sentimental in private. How they balanced survival with ceremony, silence with meaning. The world outside might see only the katana, but you now know what was carried alongside it. What truly mattered. What was hidden, soft and small, in the folds of a worn kimono. So now, let go of the armor. Let the fire dim. Picture yourself riding under the stars, wind against your cheeks, letters in your sleeve, and peace just over. The next hill. Sleep well, traveler. Good night.